everyone, I hope you're doing well. Before this video begins, I just wanted to pop in and apologize for being gone for a few weeks. I've run into some unexpected health issues these past few weeks, and they've caused me to have to take a step back from everything that I do, from YouTube, Twitch, comic work, and most things that I do on a daily basis. And while I'm still going through these health issues, I am actually doing a little bit better than I was, but I am trying to relax and take it easy. If you hear my voice go out in this video, no you didn't. My mic just totally sucks, and it's not because my body hates me or anything. Thankfully, I've found the energy to make this video, so I'm hoping that as I work a little bit more, that I'm able to get back into the feel of things again. I don't know how long I'm going to be in the state that I'm currently in, so if you would like updates on how I'm doing, or you want updates on if a video will be coming out in the near future, feel free to check out my community posts where I'll be trying my best to keep you guys updated to the best of my ability. Anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble. Let's get into the video, and I hope you guys enjoy it. In recent years, I've noticed that webcomics, more specifically webtoons, have become really popular. Some of these comics include America's #1 popular webtoon comic, Lore Olympus, and even one of South Korea's favorites called Lookism that actually has an anime adaptation on Netflix. Personally, I've not read either of these webtoon comics, but I have read Lovebot, Prince of Southland, Paragon Hero Broken, Silent Screams, Stray Souls, and a few more that I can't think of off the top of my head at the moment. I've actually been reading Dimension 20's Fantasy High as well, and that one's been a lot of fun to read too. While these comics are amazing in story and art, maybe you're someone like me who's been creating characters since they were in school, and you want to bring your vision to life to share with the world. If you don't know me, hello, my name is Wren. I am the creator of the sci-fi webtoon comic The Corruption of Cass Oliver, alongside my friend, co-creator, and writer, Lily. And today, I'll be sharing with you my top 5 tips to help you get started creating your own webtoon or webcomic on a similar platform such as Comic Fury or Tapas. Starting off, my first tip is to create what I would call a comic Bible. This is one of the most important tips I have when creating comics or any sort of media that has a massive story to it, like a movie or a game. I took the name from my brief time majoring in game art and animation when we had to create what were called art bibles for games that were being developed. And just like an art bible, a comic bible is a document or multiple documents that hold pretty much I can't believe that was such a good take, and my voice just had to break. Holy shit. Okay, try that again. Just like an art bible, a comic bible is a document or multiple documents that hold almost every single piece of information regarding your comic. I highly suggest splitting up the comic bible into 4 main sections, that being 1. World information, 2. Plot information, 3. Character information, and 4. A general ideas document. For the World Bible, I recommend documenting things such as genre, world design, like if it's steampunk, high fantasy, dystopian, utopian, etc., the world's history or timeline prior to the story, how the story functions, like if there's a number of factions or you have multiple forms of government, and anything else you might deem important. For the plot documentation, this is going to depend on what you want for your story, but I highly recommend creating a beginning to your plot as well as an ending to your plot. That way you have some sort of lifeline, and if you get lost, it's a lot easier to find your way back. If it helps, as you work on your plot, think of each chapter as its own little story. I'll give you an example, and I'll be using Chapter 1 of The Corruption of Cass Oliver as an example, so if you don't want spoilers, please feel free to skip ahead to the ending of this example. Before I get into talking about how we worked on Chapter 1, let me give you some context about the world. The world functions under what we call an oligarchical monarchy. Oligarchical? Oligarchical. With that. Google!
Oligarchical.
The world functions under what we call an oligarchical monarchy, with 4 capitals called Eden, which resides in what was the US, Avalon, which resides in what was the UK, Shangri-La, which resides in what was China, and Aru, which resides in what was South Africa. Everyone a part of the society is controlled by the clothes that they wear, the color of their hair and eyes, and by an emotion-regulating microchip that they have above their right eyebrow near their temple. They're also given jobs via an occupation coronation when they turn 18, which is important to mention for this example. Now, people who have defected and no longer fit among society are called rogues. These people are seen as dangerous to the world and are, without a better descriptor that won't make you too mad at me, quote-unquote, taken care of by the government's military. So in Chapter 1, we have two characters, Aiden, our main protagonist, and his friend and mentor, Vaughn, who has been helping him prepare for his occupation coronation and overall life as a citizen. Our goal for Chapter 1 was to have Aiden defect and turn rogue. This would be considered our ending. The question now lies of, how do we get this poor bean boy to turn rogue? And our answer lies somewhere in the middle, so in order to get to that point, we need to know what he was doing prior to the catalytic event. Since Aiden was about to participate in the occupation coronation, we knew that he would be at school for his last day, since that's how this society functions. During the last day, citizens are taught about rogues, how to spot one, and how to report one, since there seems to be a rogue epidemic in Eden. This would be considered our beginning. So now that we have our beginning, and now that we have our end, we had to figure out the in-betweens that would cause him to defect. That being said, we had the idea of Aiden visiting Vaughn, since he's not only Aiden's friend, but his mentor. Now, why would Aiden going to visit Vaughn cause him to turn rogue? Well, in this society, citizens tend to defect as a result of strong reactions to mental stimuli that cause their microchip to function, aka trauma. So our plan was to traumatize the hell out of Aiden to the point he defected, and our solution was to make Vaughn show signs of roguedom himself, which in turn would cause soldiers to show up to quote-unquote take care of him. We figured that a lot of rogues would try and make a run for it to try and escape, since a natural instinct for humans is flight, fight, or freeze. So once the soldiers did show up, Vaughn grabs Aiden, and they run out into the balcony of his 4th floor apartment complex in the middle of winter. They see more soldiers down on the ground floor, which only makes Vaughn panic more, since he doesn't see a completely viable way out of the situation. And he starts jumping from balcony to try and escape. Aiden hesitates to follow him as he isn't really sure what to do, and is overall confused about what's happening. It's only when a soldier takes a shot at Aiden that he starts to follow Vaughn, and as they continue across the balconies, Vaughn unfortunately slips during a jump, nearly misses the next balcony completely, holds on for dear life, and as Aiden reaches for his friend, another shot is taken by a soldier, which causes them both to stumble in their action to grab each other's hands, and Vaughn meets his unfortunate demise at the bottom of the apartment complex. These turn of events are enough to cause Aiden to defect, and by the end we see that he's knocked out by what is presumably a soldier. This is all to say that our beginning is Aiden finishing up his last day of school, our middle is him visiting Vaughn, only to watch him meet his demise, and our end, due to Vaughn's death, we see Aiden defect and turn rogue. I know that was probably a lot of information, but I hope that at least made a little bit of sense. If not, let me know in the comments and I'll try and explain it a little bit better. Getting back to the topic at hand, next for your comic bible would be documenting character information. This would be things like appearance, age, personality, their role within your comic, their relationship with other characters, and anything else you might deem necessary. I recommend that when you're writing your story that you do extensive research on the types of character traits, emotions, and overall character psychology, so you can make sure that you're writing solid characters and their arcs if they have any. During the time I was in university, I took a character writing class that taught me how to write characters in different ways, and one of the pieces of learning material that I still find incredibly helpful to this day is a book called Writer's Guide to Character Traits. This book came out in 2026. 2026? That's not even... Oh my goodness. This book came out in 2006 and is more than certainly outdated, but it gives an overview of character personalities and behaviors, developmental stages, psychological disorders, life events and their impact, archetypes and stereotypes, traits by gender, culture, and role, and it gives you a quick reference chart of organized lists of traits by category. The second piece of material I recommend is the Emotion Thesaurus, a writer's guide to character expression. This book, which came out in 2019, isn't as outdated, covers an introduction to emotional writing, 130 Emotion Thesaurus entries from physical signs to cues of escalation, gives you tips on crafting emotional character arcs, and gives writing aids in nuance and variety. While both of these pieces of material are great, if I had to recommend one, I would give the Emotion Thesaurus a look. If you don't have the funds for either of these books, I'd recommend watching things like documentaries on YouTube, reading articles, watching movies, reading other books if you have them, and any other types of research you can get into, not only to make sure that you're writing fleshed out characters, but to also take inspiration from them. For example, Lily and I take inspiration from pieces of media such as Lois Lowry's The Giver, Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, as well as the TV series on Hulu. We've watched several documentaries, such as the History Channel's documentary on YouTube called Life After People, and a lot more other pieces of media. When figuring out your character's personality specifically, be careful when you're working on it throughout your story. It is really easy to drift away from what your characters might do versus what you want them to do just for a shock effect. While shock effects are fun, they may not make sense for certain situations or for certain characters, and could easily make or break your story depending on what you do and how you do it, so try and keep that in mind when you're writing. Lastly, for this tip, my biggest recommendation is to write down everything, and I mean everything, no matter if you think it's going to fit in your story or not. Believe it or not, writing down every single idea that you have can actually help you in the future. There's been times for me and Lily when creating our comic that we've written an idea down all the way back in 2019 or 2020. We've forgotten about it and ended up finding it last year. Sometimes those ideas you write down could help you work through a plot hole or even writer's block. Getting into tip 2, funny enough, this is something I personally didn't do early on in the pre-production process of making CO2, and boy, do I regret it. My second tip is to draw your character's designs in a turnaround. If you don't know what a turnaround is a full 360 visual reference of your character from head to toe that shows the design of your character. This will allow you to stay consistent with not only your chosen art style, but also the details of your character, especially if they have something like piercings or tattoos. Speaking of piercings and tattoos, if you have a character with any tattoos, no matter how many, I highly recommend drawing those designs out on a separate canvas so you can copy and paste them onto your character when you need them. It just makes the drawing process of that character so much easier, especially if you're going to be drawing them over and over again. In addition to full body turnarounds, I also highly recommend creating a head turnaround for your characters. This is the same thing as a full body turnaround, but it's just from the neck up. This makes it so you can grab whatever angle you need for your panel or section you're working on for your comic and copy and paste it into your comic. Personally, I only started doing this recently as well as the full body turnarounds, which I wish I really would have done much sooner, preferably before we began releasing CO2, just because Chapter 1's art is, well... Anyway, if you would like a model guide, I have a few head turnaround charts that I found in Clip Studio Paint that I can link below, and even one that I made for myself, so feel free to check those out if that's something that interests you. I'd also like to mention that at the end of the day, if your artwork is inconsistent, that's fine. Try not to get too worked up about it. I know this is something that I struggle with a lot and I'm trying to overcome, but one of the things I love to see when reading a webcomic is just how much the art changes over time. And a lot of other people feel like that too. I think that's part of the fun and beauty of it all. As long as you're happy with it, that should be all that matters. Moving on to tip 3, this is honestly my biggest piece of advice in this video when it comes to creating a comic. If you can, get a friend or someone you trust to help you. Comic creation takes a lot more time than one might think, especially if you want a fully fleshed out story. Having somebody to help you work on your comic will not only take some of the load off of your shoulders, but it'll also help you to discover issues like plot holes, character flaws that shouldn't be there, and more that you might not notice if you're working on it by yourself. I know that without Lily's help, CO2 wouldn't have gotten as far as it is, and it wouldn't be nearly as good as it is, because I'm quite an ambitious person, and I get lost in my ideas that sometimes don't make sense for our story. So she's there to keep me in line and explain the logistics of the story if I forget. Not only that, but working with somebody might also help keep you accountable like it did for me. That way, it actually gets to a point where you're able to release your comic and not have it remain an idea. If you prefer to work on your own, that's also perfectly fine. There's no issue with that. I just happen to find that that worked out better for me when it comes to these sorts of things. While quite simple, tip 4 is yet another huge and important tip. Before you begin posting your comic, make sure you have an episode or page buffer. This will ensure that you can stick to an upload schedule, not feel pressured to consistently be pumping out your comic, especially on those days where, you have stuff going on and you just need a break. While it is tricky to have your comic become a Webtoon original, I will say that if it does happen, Webtoon will want you to have a buffer and a schedule, and I've heard their contract can be a little demanding, so that's another good reason to have a page or episode buffer. Unfortunately, for me and Lily, when we started releasing CO2, we didn't hit our buffer goal that we wanted before beginning our release. Admittedly, after years of working on it behind the scenes and not being able to talk about it with anybody due to spoilers, we had gotten pretty impatient. By that time, we had 4 separate trailers to work on and release, and they acted as a countdown toward the release date for the comic, which we'd already planned for a year prior. So when release day finally came, we weren't as prepared as we should have been. And I, in my stubbornness and naivety, thought I could pump 5 to 8 pages out in a few weeks, but once again, life decided to step in and stop me from doing that. So nearly a year later, we're just starting chapter 2, and we've already had to take a little bit of a hiatus due to my health issues that I'm currently having with no page buffer. I'm trying to work on new pages at the moment so we actually have a buffer, so hopefully we aren't gone for too much longer. Long story short, I recommend you have a buffer. It will save you in the long run, and you won't end up like me. And finally, my last tip for starting your own webcomic, tip 5. If you, for whatever reason, are not having fun working on your comic, then stop. Don't force yourself to do something that you're not enjoying if you can, because you'll begin to not enjoy it as a whole, and you'll burn out. Making a webcomic, while stressful at times and a little tedious, is supposed to be fun and an exciting experience. So if you're not having fun, simply stop and come back at a time where you feel like working on it. Comic creation is not supposed to be a race, and I promise you, the hard work and time you spend doing your pre-production, no matter how long, it is worth it in the end. Trust me. We've been working on this comic for 6 years, and we're just now starting our release. I promise you, it is worth it. So those are my 5 tips on how to start your own webcomic on Webtoon or a similar webcomic platform. I hope at least some of these tips weren't just an echo chamber of some of the other videos out there talking about the same thing. Regardless, I hope it helped somebody out there, and if it did, feel free to give this video a like and hit that subscribe button. If you have any more questions on how to start your own webcomic, feel free to ask them in the comments below, and I'll try my best to answer them to the best of my ability. If you have any ideas for videos, feel free to leave those down below as well. With that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your time zone, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao!